Game one versus the New York Yankees and the Seattle Mariners did not turn out in the Mariners' favor. They lost the game, but did they lose even more than that? Joe, let's talk a little bit about game one against the New York Yankees. What all happened in this game?
I'm gonna be honest. I missed the first play, the big one where Teo. Oh, I see you rolling your eyes. He he dropped the ball. Like, what happened? Did he like underrun it? Did he just not get there?
Dude, I think he thought he had to jump at the wall to catch it, and he most
Oh,
certainly did not, and he did a little and then like it bounced out of his glove.
okay.
A catch that was made was this catch from Ken Griffey Jr. robbing his dad. A very famous catch. Foco made a bobblehead out of it. It's a brand new sliding bobble base. Check it out. Link down in the description down below. Code Mariner Mojo 10 at checkout for 10% off your order.
You'd
It
hope a
was
guy that's from the AL East played enough time in Yankee Stadium have a bit better of a sense of the field around him. So I know that it was kind of a rough start for George on the mound, and I don't know, this game it never felt too far out of reach, even though for some reason we just can't keep these like random outfielders for the Yankees within the yard. Billy McKinley, as Dave Sims kept calling him on the broadcast, which I thought was very funny. Billy McKinney, just I get 2-run bomb, and it's just that's what kind of sealed the deal. It's just the knife in the back for the Mariners in this game. But again, it never felt overly out of reach for me personally. I kept watching, okay, like something might get generated here, but Gerrit Cole did Gerrit Cole things in game one.
Yeah, Gerrit Cole looked really good. We are Mariners Mojo. That's Joe, and I am Colton. We're going to be talking all about this series versus the Yankees, as well as maybe a little bit about the Orioles here at the end of this Hit It Here podcast, episode 13. And don't forget, you could win this Teoscar Hernandez autographed baseball by becoming a member of the Mariner Mojo channel by clicking join down below. As long as you're a member on July 1st, you have a chance to win this baseball. We have some exclusive videos as well as some giveaways over there. Make sure to click the join button down below to find out more. And going in a little bit more on what Joe said about George Kirby. I wouldn't say that he had necessarily a bad start. He didn't have a great start. I think he only struck out 3,
Four,
maybe.
but quality start. 7 innings.
Yeah,
Good. It was a good start. It's just the two big hits happened, and the Mariners did not reciprocate that to the Yankees in this game.
I would honestly say really just that one hit to McKinney was like the big one. Teoscar wholeheartedly should have caught that baseball.
Sure.
100%.
So it's technically a 2-1 loss if we're being nitpicky.
Yeah, I
A
can't
little bit of
believe
copium.
that was not called an error, in my opinion. I know that he had to do a little bunny hop for it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Needless to say, that was the least of our worries. The worst part about the first game against the New York Yankees, as the Mariners lost their starting shortstop, J.P. Crawford, on a very weird play. Did you get to see anything about how he injured himself?
I did not. So I started watching the game, I think, in the 5th inning, I think. So I just saw Twitter and JP Crawford exits game, and I'm like, oh great, the world's on fire, everything's dead, and Dylan Moore's in at shortstop. So what really happened, I guess, on that play?
So it was weird. So what JP said it was Harrison Bader had stolen second base. He slid into second base, and the throw from the catcher, I think Cal was catching in the
Yes.
first game of the series, wasn't a great throw. Got into center field. JP fake tag, and then he got up to go after the ball, and Bader got up at the same time, and kind of like when he was getting up full speed and JP running full speed, like accidentally headbutted him in the shoulder. And
Mm,
it was really weird. You can kind of see JP, you could tell he's, not loving that feeling.
sure.
And then he went up to the plate, took his at bat the next inning, and on one of his swings, he kind of just grimaced. And
Oh.
he was saying after the game that he doesn't really understand why it hurt so bad. He said it must have got him in the right spot or something. It was just a right shoulder contusion, so hopefully nothing too big for JP there. It is his throwing shoulder, which is
Yeah.
a little bit scary. Obviously he had in spring training, I think he had something going on with the shoulder as well, if I remember correctly, that kept him out for maybe a few games in spring training. I don't
It's
remember.
definitely like I think he used the age-old term soggy arm
That's
for
right.
about a game and a half, maybe 2 games. Yeah, I mean, we've seen similar situations like this. Unfortunately, it also happened with the Yankees before, but different team. It was the Padres when Tatis didn't slide back in and he kind of bumped into Anthony Rizzo, and Rizzo was kind of shaken up. Kind of like, I feel like if the way you're describing it sounds like a similar play, it's just one of those happenstance things where you're just two guys going in the same direction and they just get bumped. Maybe it's a Charlie horse and JP's just kind of feeling a little bit extra, gave him a dead arm a little bit. If it's just a right shoulder contusion and that's kind of where we're leaning, he probably gets the day off day, but you never know with the throwing arm. For specifically a shortstop. I don't know. I'm not super worried right now. I think if we don't see him the rest of this Yankee series, that's where I'm going to start to kind of like, all right, like what's really going on with JP?
Yeah, and it sounds like he is going in for an MRI in the morning of Wednesday. So it's possible that we hear more today at
Yeah.
some point. But let's say JP is out for the next few days. What do you think this lineup could look like?
It definitely depends on what the Yankees are rolling out today, if they've announced a starter at this point, because it's still to be determined as we're recording this, but there's not a lefty in there that I think would see a start for the Yankees. So I would expect a righty on the mound, and I think that means Colton Wong is going to start probably at second base, and either Dylan Moore or Jose Caballero will start at shortstop. We saw Dylan Moore enter the game for JP in this one. Whether or not Demo gets the start or Cabby gets the start, it's kind of tough to say right now, just with, they're both not overly great against right-handed batters. If they want Dylan Moore to get more reps over there, not really sure. Are you feeling something similar, or do you think they're going to do Demo and Cabby instead of bringing Wong into play?
If Colton Wong starts this game, he's hitting a home run.
Ooh, a little juju, a little.
You heard it here first.
There you go, on the Hit It Here podcast.
The Hit It Here podcast with Mariners Mojo.
Bringing the start of summer with the new summer collection from Mariner Mojo, available now on spring, link in the description down below.
So we need to talk a little bit more about the pitching side of things in game one. Gerrit Cole specifically, because he was on. He looked really, really good up there. Like you said, typical Gerrit Cole things that the Mariners managed 4 hits. Of course, Jared Kelenic owns Gerrit Cole. That's all we need to say.
Big W.
Did you see his double?
I did see his double. That was the
Did
sixth
you think it was
inning.
getting out?
I thought he was going to get caught, and that's my lack of Yankee Stadium, knowledge. Because the way he hit it and the way is McKinney left, right?
I think so.
I don't know. The Yankees outfield's kind of a hodgepodge mess right now with Judge out and kind of everybody moving around. But the way he was tracking it, I thought he was going to try and make a catch off the wall, like a jumping catch, but he ultimately played it off the wall. It was close to going out, right? It was like, hit off like the middle of the wall, rolled past him. So Ty gets to hustle around from first, bless his heart, and Jared gets stopped at second. But yeah, Jared, tons of power. We know this from him going the opposite field against Gerrit Cole. Saw the pitch where he needed to take it, and he took it the opposite field and got a good hit out of it.
So let's talk a little bit then about Jose Caballero and Gerrit Cole at bat. What did you see? Because obviously there was maybe some words exchanged between the two. It didn't really look like there was a whole lot going on up until Gerrit Cole was walking off of the mound. What'd you see?
As soon as I saw the ball go about 80 feet, it looked like above where any targeted pitch should be thrown, I felt that there was some sort of message being sent there, because it's not one where an accidental miss high. That's a purposeful, you threw it that high, right? Because you've seen guys miss high before, and it usually doesn't end up that much, right? Like it's above the umpire's head. It's above the outstretched arm of the catcher. That one, I don't think the Monstars from Space Jam could have caught. You know what I mean? Like, even the tall blue guy, I don't think he's catching that ball, okay? Victor Wembanyama was in the stadium in game one, throwing out the first pitch. He's not catching that ball, okay? That was intentional, and I definitely think it was a message for Cabby. As, it's the game, right? It's a veteran guy on the mound being like, hey, stop dicking around with the pitch clock. But we know it's within Cabby's rights to do that. It's just people should be used to this by now, and, how they want to deal with it on their own, personal ways. Gerrit Cole's was to throw a ball, 1 billion miles into the air. But, he does get the best of Caballero in that at-bat. And this is where you're talking about the jawing comes in. He's kind of walking back to the dugout after he strikes him out on a great pitch. And he's kind of wagging his finger. And Dave Sims on the broadcast kept saying, no, he's probably doing that to the umpire, trying to diffuse the situation. And Goldsmith's there trying to stir the pot, like, oh, that's a word for Cabby, for sure. Which is just kind of, the angel and the devil on the shoulders of, like, Mariners fans. And, like, I don't know, just any viewer of the game. That's just what it is. It's two guys going after each other. And Gerrit Cole thought he was going to send a message there. He ultimately wins this battle. But I don't know. Are you feeling any specific way about that exchange, or do you think Cabby's going to continue to run into something like this, or like where are you feeling with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gerrit Cole's one of the biggest crybabies in the entire sport. It's been that way for the past few years. I remember running out, not being able to use sticky stuff. I don't know. I strongly dislike Gerrit Cole. I think that he is such a little baby back bitch, personally. I think that in Cabby's defense, you have what? Let's 15 seconds on the pitch clock. You have until 8 seconds till you need to look up at the pitcher. That is your time. That is the only time as a hitter that you get. Otherwise, you are at the mercy of the pitcher. So if you look up with 12 seconds left, the pitcher can wait until there's 1 second left. He could if you wanted to. You could just be sitting there waiting for 13 seconds while the pitcher just sits there and plays with the ball in his glove. I don't know, looks around, looks at the butterfly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, it's so like, so if pitchers are going to complain about this, they need to realize that hitters have to, because it's better than a hitter calling time every other strike, every other pitch. So it's like, relax, man. You got, let the guy get in there, get set, and just don't even pay attention. Just wait until he's looking at you. Just sit there, hang out. Who cares?
Yeah.
Just take time to breathe a little bit. If it gets you out of your rhythm, whatever. Kyle Seager, his entire career sat here like this to the umpire. And I'm sure that was longer than 7 seconds.
Yeah.
So get over it. Martin Maldonado, Gerrit Cole, listen. Y'all are a bunch of babies, man. You guys can't have all of the power. Let the hitter have some sort of power during the at-bat. And I don't know. I think it's stupid. I mean, it's the rule. It is the rule. And no matter what, Caballero is the one that's in the right here. It is his prerogative. He can stand up there until the 8 seconds all he wants. Gerrit Cole, if he's trying to send a message with a little lollygag pitch over the top of Caballero's head, I don't know what kind of message he's trying to send. Maybe I would, if I was a fan in the stands, I would think that was a message sent for me, because it was closer to a fan than it was to Jose Caballero.
Like there's nowhere near him. And I get what you're saying, being at the dispense of the pitcher and like the batter needing to have some sort of edge there. And that is something that Caballero's done a really good job of, is kind of maintaining that balance for himself. And it is all about your own personal approach. And as a batter, you need to gain some sort of competitive edge. And if disrupting the pitcher's flow, interrupting Gerrit Cole's, mechanics, or, however he just wants to, deliver the ball to the plate, you're going to try and take advantage of that. And Caballero has done it. This isn't the first time, and it definitely will not be the last. So just kind of, I don't want to say get used to it, but until a rule changes because he's taking too long, he's taking advantage of the clock doesn't control him. He is controlled by the clock more than anything. So I agree with your sentiment about get over it, but it's just going to continue to happen because pitchers, the opposing team isn't going to like being kind of manipulated by the clock from the perspective of the batter. And I understand that if a batter was doing that to us, they'd be like, he's at it again with his timely timeout and his stretching and his reapplying of his batting gloves. That, gosh darn it. It's like people booing at a pickoff, but when we pick off, it's fine. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, that's the other thing, is if the team's so mad about it, then you can do it too. No one is stopping you, Anthony Rizzo, from just standing there and looking directly at the dirt. No one is stopping you.
And then just putting a hand up right behind you as soon as it hits, 9 seconds, like time. Like, no one's stopping you.
No one cares. That's the way the game. They made the rules. You feel free. As long as you're following the rules, who cares? That's all there is to it. Do I think that Jose Caballero is going to start a brawl at some point? Yes.
Maybe not be like he'll start it, but he will be, a catalyst for it for sure.
A cabalist. Cabbyist.
Nice. A cabalist.
So another 2 games here against the New York Yankees. We already talked a little bit about not knowing who the starting pitcher is today for the Yankees with Luis Castillo on the mound. What do you think we see out of Castillo today, and what do you think that the Mariners need to do to win this series?
To win this series, they have to take the game today to split. So far. You're welcome. I mean, a quality start, 7 innings, I think will be, kind of what it takes, limiting them to 2-3 runs. What George did put the Mariners in a great spot to win game 1. It's just Gerrit Cole was doing really well, right? There's no other way to say it. Gerrit Cole and then Clay Holmes came in and they did really well. The only 2 pitchers needed. Granted, the Mariners only used 2 pitchers, so their bullpen's going to be fresh. Ty Adcock came in and threw a pretty solid inning, I'd say. Getting a little paint. Maybe got a couple lucky calls in there, but looking really, really solid. Both Penn and, Luis Castillo, they're going to be fresh. Castillo needs to go out, give you 7, keep them around 2-ish runs, and then the bullpen needs to be lights out. From the offense, I think, is the bigger question, right? That's always been, I think, aside from a couple stretches there at the end of May, early June, is where we're like, oh, what's the pitching going to do this time? It's the offense that needs to really step up, right? And with no announced starter coming out from the Yankees as of right now. Tomorrow, who knows? I feel like you have to look at that as an advantage versus your ace, right? Like if they're gonna call up Johnny Brito from AAA, he pitched last on the 15th of June and he gave up 6 earned in AAA. He's pitched in the bigs this year already for them. If that's who you're going to go up against, you need to go out and win that game and put yourself in a position to win the series in game 3. And if the Mariners are able to chase Brito early, that is going to expend this Yankees bullpen, who they've been pretty good so far, and they only used Clay Holmes in yesterday's game. So if we can get as many arms used out of that bullpen so it's a little bit more depleted for game 3, that should put the Mariners in a little bit better of a spot. And hopefully, the Mariners themselves don't have to use as many bullpen pieces in game 2 as well.
Yeah, we didn't see a whole lot from them in terms of getting to the pitch count of Gerrit Cole in game 1. But with Luis Castillo on the mound, we saw what he could do in his very first start for the Seattle Mariners against the New York Yankees. And then I think it was also his second start against the New York Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he shoved in both of those games. And that was kind of our first introduction to Luis Castillo in a Mariners uniform. So we know that Castillo can pitch against these Yankees and really have no problem. And I think Aaron Judge was in the lineup at that point too, when we were facing them way back when in 2022. Obviously, a judgeless lineup is one that is a lot easier to pitch through than one with Aaron Judge in the middle of it. Luis Castillo, he's been relatively good lately. He had that one little stretch where he was off here or there, but we saw Gerrit Cole start yesterday. There's a good chance he could start for the American League in the All-Star game, but Luis Castillo is also another guy that I think could be bidding for a start in that American League team, because obviously he's pitching at his home ballpark. He's kind of the ace of the staff. I think either one of those guys could be on the mound to start the game for the American League All-Stars. And then we get to game 3. Bryan Woo, young Bryan Woo, making like his probably 5th, right? Something like that.
In major leagues?
Yeah.
It's his 4th start.
4th? Okay.
Yeah.
Going up against the trash can known as Domingo Germán. What do you think about this pitching matchup, and how do you feel about Bryan Woo in Yankee Stadium?
I am a little bit worried. I will admit. I'm hesitant, not because I don't believe in the Woo. I do. He pitched really well against the White Sox, I'd say, and then he had a pretty good start against the Angels, coming off of one of the worst debuts in MLB history, right? So, building confidence, he's feeling himself out a little bit more on the mound, he's pitching with more confidence. The issue there is that it goes from the Rangers being like the top offense in baseball. Then you face the Angels, who's got, 2 stars, but the rest is kind of ragtag group a little bit there. So it's not as heavy of an offense. And then you get to the White Sox, and in June, the White Sox had one of the worst offenses in all of baseball so far. So that's the team that he went out and struck out 9 through 5 2/3 against. So his competition, albeit it's major league talent, has, slowly gotten a little bit easier. Now he's going to be pitching in a very hostile environment in Yankee Stadium. I'm sure everyone and their mother's going to let him know that he had a 27 ERA after his first start against Texas. I would be hesitant to be, confident, but at the same time, he's just a young guy going to go out there and throw his best, right? It's against Domingo Germán, like you mentioned. Germán, he's had great outings, but a lot of the times that's been because of, a little bit of the sticky stuff. And I don't know, if Woo can go out there and give you 5 solid innings after Luis Castillo hopefully goes out there and dominates for 7, maybe 8, that's a win for me. If Woo limits them to 2 to 3 runs, I think that's just kind of where we're at with the offense, is we need the opposing team to not score more than 3, and then we're in a good spot to win that game.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so imperative that George Kirby, went, 7 innings, I think, in game 1.
Yep.
And then ideally Castillo can go 7 in game 2. The bullpen should be well rested for a Bryan Woo start that may or may not be short, because we don't know exactly what we have with Bryan Woo yet. Obviously, he looked really good against the White Sox, but you touched on it. It's the White Sox, the worst offense in baseball right now. And you're not facing Aaron Judge, which is good.
Yes.
I do appreciate them not activating Aaron Judge for this series. I know there were talks that somehow, some way he was going to rise from the dead, like Pete Alonso coming back 2 weeks early. Yeah, yes. Ooh, yes, Judge stuff, and come back for this series. I'm glad he didn't. I still think you have to worry about maybe Anthony Rizzo against Bryan Woo taking a high fastball. Yeah, he had a really good game 1. As for the Yankee series, ideally you take 2 out of 3. I think mentally you have to you have to think that the Mariners take game 2, like you said. The pitching matchup definitely favors the M's. And then game 3, as long as the offense can get to Domingo Germán, similar to what they did on, I think it was May 29th, last time they faced him, then they should be all right as long as Brian Wu can hold them below 3, just like you said.
Yeah.
And then the Mariners are going to move on to Baltimore to take on the Orioles. Now, that series is going to be an interesting one because the Baltimore Orioles are currently on a heater, one of the best teams in all of baseball. What do you think the Mariners have to do to stifle this Orioles offense?
That's the problem, right? Is that the offense is cooking, and even without Cedric Mullins right now, he's been on the injured list for quite some time. The Orioles just seem to keep plugging away. They keep scoring runs. They got out early against the Rays in yesterday's game. They beat them 8-6. It is only a 2-game series for them against Tampa Bay, and then they get a day off. So they're coming fresh back home at Camden against the Mariners. What do we need to do to hold them in? I don't know. It's hard, right? It's a very high-powered offense right now. I know Jorge Mateo's slowed down, but you've got guys in there like Adley Rutschman, Ryan Mountcastle that are just young studs. Gunnar Henderson turned his season around. It's going to be tough. If there's a pitching staff that I believe can do it, it would be the Seattle Mariners pitching staff. I mean, we're going to have Logan Gilbert, who didn't have his best stuff, he's been spotty this year. His whip is really low, though, so if you can limit base runners and maybe not give up that big hit, maybe play into that, deeper left field wall out there at Camden this year, try and play to that a little bit more, you can go in there and you can take that first game, right? Stun them in their home ballpark and really, set the tempo for the series. And that's kind of what you need to do. The Mariners, I feel like, have had a bit of issue kind of setting the tempo for winning baseball in opposing teams' ballparks. Game 1 against the Yankees felt winnable at moments, but they just never kind of got the ball rolling. If they can do that against the Orioles, whose pitching staff, it's not great, right? They don't have a standout guy like Gerrit Cole. They don't have a standout guy like Luis Castillo that's going to go out there and be your stopper, go out and shove. They've had great moments from guys, but it's never a guarantee, and that's what you kind of need to bank on is the Mariners' offense being able to take it to the Orioles' pitching staff.
Yeah, and you have to think that the Mariners have the advantage when it comes to pitching in this series, 100%. I think the Mariners, if you were just to line it up on paper, pitching-wise, they take all 3 games. But offensively, it's such a hit or miss thing with the Mariners offense. Are they going to make Kyle Bradish look like a Cy Young Award contender? Hell, they might. Or are they going to go knock around, get struck out, 18 times and still win a game? The Mariners offense is such an enigma that I don't know what to expect out of them in Camden Yards, especially. I mean, Camden Yards, up until this year, has been pretty easy to hit at. Obviously, the moving back of the left field wall. Was that last year they did that?
I think it was this year. Or it might have been last year.
Obviously, it's going to be a little bit harder for a Mariners lineup that is very right-handed heavy to take advantage of some pull power in Camden Yards. You don't really have a big lefty. Jared Kelenic is your best bet. Cal Raleigh, your 2 best bets to take one to right field, which is relatively easy to get it out of.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, if any pitching staff can kind of pipe down this Orioles offense, it has to be the Mariners, one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. And we talked about just how important this road trip is for the Seattle Mariners, both against the Yankees and the Orioles, in this video on the screen now. Make sure to click on that one next. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us here at Mariners Mojo. We'll see you next week, and go Mariners.